Hello, and welcome to the Observability Trends webinar series. I'm Grant Swanson, your host, and today we'll discuss the topic of observability for Snowflake. We have Kyle Champlin, Principal Product Manager, who wasn't able to join the live event, but provided a short introduction video that we will share with the audience, followed by a live demo from Daniel Odievich, Principal Solutions Architect from Observe.
Hey there, and welcome to the Observability for Snowflake webinar. My name is Kyle Champlin, and I'm the product manager here at Observe for what we're calling Observe for Snowflake. With me today will also be my colleague Daniel. He's a principal solutions architect, and he's an expert in all things Snowflake here at Observe. We appreciate you making the time to hear about our new Snowflake native app, which launches next week. We're very excited. We believe it has some exciting new capabilities that are relevant to companies like us who leverage Snowflake really as a true platform for building and delivering value to customers. Before we get to that, you may not have ever heard of Observe, so let's talk about a little bit of who we are. So Observe was founded in 2017 to really disrupt the observability market. In fact, two of our technical co-founders came from engineering leadership positions at both Splunk and Snowflake. And part of their hypothesis around building on top of Snowflake is that due to the ever-growing volumes of data and the way that they would need to be linked together, a really deeply different architectural approach was going to be necessary to meet the demands of the explosion in data and the increased complexity for applications that we're actually seeing today in 2024. When we think about those trends, and we apply them to Snowflake as a platform of choice for a lot of organizations, you really get three big areas that require a solution tailored not just to monitoring, but truly big O observability. And the focus of Observe for Snowflake is around offering both health and performance, sort of the holistic and even sort of query level data, things around stored procedures, containers, all to ensure things are running smoothly and that they're operating within the assumed performance envelope. You talk about resource optimization. That's another really core pillar. Am I making the best use of the resources I've deployed in my Snowflake organization? Are there specific accounts that are operating better than others? And why might that be? Resource optimization is really a deep topic. And as we'll see later on, we collect a depth of data that helps support better outcomes for your Snowflake accounts. And security and compliance is a really big topic today. Obviously, many organizations store really important and sometimes sensitive data in Snowflake. And that data is essential to gleaning top insights about your business. As such, providing telemetry into who's logging in and from where and who has MFA enabled, for example, what does that user session look like as compared to other sessions on an account? Is a user logging into multiple accounts simultaneously? All of those things are pieces you can glean from different parts and views inside of your Snowflake accounts, and we help you stitch those together in sort of a cohesive whole. So that said, this new app that we're building, this native app, Observe for Snowflake, when we set out to build it, making collection of the right data to answer those core needs was really an essential part of sort of our starting point, but we didn't stop there. Out of the box, we provide a really, really easy way to ship basic monitoring data sets around storage, performance, credit usage, all that stuff, and to go really deep on things like metrics and traces in the event table. So if you haven't heard about that, definitely check out the sessions from this year's Snowflake Summit about event table, and I believe it'll be rolling out to a lot of customers automatically pretty soon. And it's a really important part of sort of getting visibility into the apps that you do have running on Snowflake as a platform. But irrespective of the type of data, we surface those in a familiar search interface. So if you're not familiar with Observe's Log Explorer, Metrics Explorer, Trace Explorer, rest assured they're going to feel very comfortable to operations teams. And there's more structured forms that we're also bundling with our app to show you dashboards and worksheets, things that allow you to go a little bit more deeply into the data itself. And then lastly, we also know that a lot of folks are super early days in adopting things like Snowpark Container Services, and we're big fans of that here at Observe. And there's even some newer ML features that are built on top of Snowflake and exposed in a really elegant way. But nearly all customers, if they use some form of, say, just a stored procedure or a user-defined function, for example, those get emitted to the event table. So this new thing that Snowflake has launched over the last about, we'll call it 24 months or so, we've been an early adopter partner to help you realize how to analyze that data and really surface it just like you'd surface other sort of APM-ish data, right? So that said, why would Observe be unique is a pretty important thing for us to sort of clarify. So one really important thing is that Observe itself is built on top of Snowflake. And so that it's really, really critical that we have a well-optimized deployment, as that ladders up to things like our cost of goods sold, If we want to provide a really efficient service as a connected app model, as we'll talk about in a little bit, like we want to be really efficient. And so we want to know where we can sort of fine tune things and give customers more value at the same price, right? Furthermore, tracking performance over time across, say, bundle releases in Snowflake is super critical for us as an activity. And normally this would be like a pretty like, well, duh point of view. But as you know, we've lived this and we've developed a tremendous amount of expertise in about the last 6 years, right? This has been core to our business from the beginning. And really what we've waited to release and why we've waited to release this native app is more to just simplify the experience. We've always had sort of the expertise. We do this for customers sort of on an ad hoc basis, but really making this turnkey for all those folks working hard to sort of just support Snowflake as is and to make sure things are running well. We didn't want to add a burden to them. So this was mostly focused on, hey, let's take advantage of this super cool native app capability. Let's give a really turnkey, easy experience to admins, and they just ship data to us, and we do all the analytics on top of it. The other thing that's really important to note is that Snowflake Marketplace in particular has really matured in a way that's allowed us to partner not only commercially with Snowflake, but also just how we've developed this native app to make things really smooth for folks to onboard data from their Snowflake environments into Observe. We'll have an announcement fairly soon on that front, but we're just super excited to be partnering with the Snowflake team. So when we talk about what Observe does well, other than obviously know our own Snowflake deployment really, really well, it's to help customers visualize and navigate their observability data very quickly and efficiently, irrespective of scale. Like if we're talking hundreds of terabytes a day, we have customers doing that today. And really our approach to building the analytics side of the Snowflake app was really no different. So we reached out to a bunch of current customers to be early design partners, and they've really helped guide us through like, what do they want to see? What format do they want to see it in? What is helpful and useful to security teams, to operations teams? And so we built out data sets and dashboards that let you easily perform ad hoc searches. I mentioned those explorers early on. And we also have some more pedestrian use cases like tracking user logins. In fact, if you look at our sessions data set, as I believe we'll demo later on, there's really some deep, rich information, not just about sort of who's logged in, but where they're logging in from, of course, but also to dig deep into like, what are they doing that might be different than what they've done traditionally? And it's a pretty incredible capability that we've surfaced in a very ad hoc and simple way to navigate. And later on, Daniel will give you a taste of what we built on the Observe side of things, what we call apps as well, just to help you easily navigate and understand your Snowflake data. And so for those of you who are interested in the inner workings of how our native app works, this is a super high level version, but we think it fairly represents functionally what our native app is doing in your Snowflake deployment. So a way to think about this is that we ingest Snowflake data just like we would with all of our other integrations. Specifically, we're collecting this data via HTTP. So we have an HTTP receiver, and our native app ships it over HTTP to our receiver for ingestion, and then obviously further analysis. On the Snowflake side, we've packaged up a number of Snowflake primitives. So the Snowflake native app that you install from the marketplace has a very nice Streamlit UI to help you walk through the setup process. And the primary components are a scheduled task and a stored procedure, I should say multiple scheduled tasks and multiple stored procedures that you have full control over. And those have been pre-packaged to read events from a handful of sort of curated views. And that ships them over to over to Observe, your specific Observe tenant. And then we provide out-of-the-box dashboards and data sets to model that data. We also provide some additional things like watermark tables. This is sort of the sort of how the sausage is made in terms of how we keep track of where we've read in the stream or all the other thing. Really just a focus on efficiency of getting this deployed easily. You can run it on an extra small warehouse if you're so inclined. It scales very, very well. And the idea here is just to sort of demystify what we're doing. It really is not rocket surgery. So before I hand it over to Daniel, just a few things around the bend that we think are actually really exciting. And we also want to talk about the different deployment patterns we also have coming up. We talked about the one that is going to GA very soon. In fact, we're going to public preview this coming Monday. But beyond the HTTP level integration I just talked about, let's talk through a few other things. So again, this is sort of this current status quo. You install the native app from the marketplace. This sits alongside the data that's already in your Observe tenant. If you don't have an Observe tenant, feel free to sign up for a free trial if you go to account.observeinc.com. That said, this offering is what's going to go live in public preview on Monday. So this is going to be probably the most common deployment pattern. It's very successful. The idea here really is that it sort of also decouples the need to be in the same region as compared to this next version, which we'll be releasing fairly soon after GA. So this next big milestone is actually going to take advantage of some of the data sharing capabilities that are native to Snowflake. And because Observe is also built on top of Snowflake, you can actually data share in and totally sidestep the sort of HTTP transport piece of this. So your data always remains in your Snowflake account, at least for the views that we build sort of those custom dashboards on top of. And lastly, this is sort of the real big one, and some of the things I was alluding to earlier in the marketplace discussion is actually just sort of larger than Snowflake data. The idea here is that we would deploy Observe as a connected app where the ingestion of the data, not just Snowflake data, lands in your Snowflake account. And so we do all the things that we do in our multi-tenant SaaS service, the thing that has many customers. But we do it as sort of on a one-by-one basis, just based off the needs of the customer. So we're super excited to have these different ways to use Observe and to take advantage of it. So that said, if you're wondering how to get started, and before I hand it over to Daniel, you can sign up for access. Well, like I mentioned, we'll have public preview on July 29th. You can sign up here at view.observeinc.com/forward-for-snowflake. Little form you can fill out. We'll get that, and we'll basically allow list your account in what is currently a private listing on the marketplace, just purely to sort of get early access and feedback. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Daniel to provide a nice demonstration for y'all.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Kyle, for a nice presentation of our stuff. Let's take a look at the practice of this right here. Let's see, which screen am I sharing? Hopefully. Grant, give me a thumbs up if you could see a Snowflake screen. Excellent. All right. So as Kyle was saying, we have an app inside of Snowflake that we did a private share to this one account. I can click on this and see the review of it, and I'm going to just install it real quick. I'm going to get it. I'll specify the default name. I'll use my demo warehouse to install this. As the app installs, we're going to be able to, we need some additional configuration that it has to be done outside of it. We create a certain database to hold, what? Go on. How about this? We're going to do this sysadmin. We created, what is going on with this warehouse? Sorry, guys. Object doesn't exist. Okay, so how about this? We'll switch over to account admin and user role sysadmin. All right, we'll create a database. We'll put a schema inside of it. We'll create a few secrets that we use to talk to us and to authenticate to our endpoint. We will create a network rule to allow this particular Snowflake account to talk to us in Observe. We'll switch over to the account admin role to create an external access integration, which binds this all together and enables the network rule to be used by the private functions that are within this application. And then we'll grant permissions to this application to those entities that we've had here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here we go. We'll also grant permissions to read an event table to this application. Again, it's very explicitly done so that we don't unwrap ourselves and grab stuff that's not our business. You as an administrator get to control what gets sent. The app should be done and installing right now, so let's go and configure it. This is a Streamlit UI that fires up. I'm running this in dark mode, which I very much appreciate from our colleagues at Snowflake. We will allow the data pump warehouse, which is my extra small warehouse, to run those regular tasks to send something to us. We'll also allow the imported privileges to read, for this app to read from the account usage share from the information that Snowflake exposes about their performance. So we'll grant that as well. And then finally, in the app, we have to specify which external access integration we're going to be using. So let's go grab this guy. So external integration, switch over to this second screen. External integration goes in here. My secret for the token to authenticate to us goes in here. And the endpoint that we're talking to goes in here. We add this. Under the hood, the application rewrites some of the permissions, and now it is able to talk to us to this particular endpoint up in the cloud. And we're going to send, how about this? We'll send one of our query history views right here. So he'll add on this and let it add, and very quickly just review what we got going on. Snowflake publishes a variety of the useful informations about the tables, databases, schemas, views, the performance of the virtual warehouses, all kinds of stuff inside of an account usage share. So from all these views that we have here, we're able to grab the data and ship it over to Observe and marry and enrich this together. So query history is probably the most commonly used view right here that contains all the information about all the queries ever run by a Snowflake account. And we're shipping it to us right now as part of this setup. So query history is done. And I'm going to very rapidly add a list of databases just for the heck of it right here and just turn that on. As soon as that screen refreshes, we already see I already sent 300 different queries. This account has minimal traffic, so it's not a tremendous amount of data emerging right off of here. But as I switch over to Observe tenant, I should be able to, if I refresh the screen, I should be able to start seeing the data. Here we go, observations arriving here already. And here's the data in a raw form delivered by Observability for Snowflake application to an Observe tenant. All right. So switching gears now, so we'll actually close this altogether. Let's take a look at what that, switching over to the next one. Let's take a look at what the data looks like in Observe. I'm actually going to switch over to a different tenant, which has considerably more pieces of information flowing into it. On my screen, you see a view that we call a link view of all the different Snowflake data sets right here. So we have we have a nice around 50 different sets of data that represent information about Snowflake instance. So for instance, right here, there's a procedure, a service, actually something really central. We have an account. We modeled this particular connectivity from top to bottom. We have an account that may contain a network policy, some tasks, file formats, network rules, schemas, tables, pipes, sequences, all the entities and artifacts that are native to the Snowflake. Those are kind of showing up in blue. And then for some of the icons are showing up in pinkish purple. There's a warehouse load history, event usage history, metering history, etc., etc. If I switch over to the lineage view, this is one of my favorite ways of seeing this stuff right here and just focus on what comes out of the Snowflake. If I can click on this really quickly, hang on, it's kind of hard to click. You could see the information emerging from the Snowflake endpoint. We have modeled all those data sets and produced enriched and correctly typed data for each one of those entities and their metrics associated with them. I'm going to switch over to the datasets view and just to show you the examples of this right here. It's a Snowflake app, has a variety of entities that map to the things that are configured in your Snowflake account, such as databases, pipes, procedures, schemas, tables, and also metadata views. And some of those would look very familiar to you if you ever seen the account usage history. So for instance, the view for automatic clustering history contains metrics associated with automatic clustering for tables. The view for the login history, we're going to be taking a look at that, has all the logins for the users. The view for query history contains information about queries, all enriched and linked together. So Kyle mentioned earlier the events table and Snowflake Trail, various entities. Let's take a look at them. As we switch to our log explorer, on the left side of it, you can see I'm looking at the event table logs coming in from a Snowflake event table they have configured earlier. As I switch around, so let's take a look at the event table log. If I switch around here, I can see my log. I'm going to collapse this left side to get a little bit more screen real estate. I have my logs fully shaped and enriched. I have the various severities and the code file paths and code line numbers, various executables. I can link to the queries that they invoke to. I can see the databases and the schemas and accounts that they're associated with. But I'm going to take a look here. If I could just scroll a little further to the left, I'm going to just use the power of the log explorer to filter to one specific function. This is one of the functions that we ourselves invoke in this account to send something to us. And as I filter to it, you can immediately see I can use the log explorer to troubleshoot this function. There's nothing wrong with this right this very moment, but you can see the event table output containing informational debug and potentially even errors is stored in here. And I can pre-use this at however I'd like. As we're so as we switch over there's other types of the logs that you can get from inside of the observability for Snowflake from inside of Observe. And we'll switch over to the Log Explorer. And this time we're looking at the query history view. Query history view is probably the most useful view you could have for general purpose administrators. Let's take a look at it today. So today till 10:20, I have a view of a history of all my queries. There's a substantial number of them. As you can see, this account issues something close to 100,000 queries every 10 minutes. This is just our engineering account. And in our real production environments, the load of queries is orders of magnitude higher. And one of the things that we like to encourage everybody is that putting query tags in to associate the workloads with some sort of a metadata. So in this case, we have a JSON object right here on the right side that highlights information about our specific customer. So we have ability to query this particular view, the query history view, using the enriched data in a query tag. So let's take a look at this. Query tag equal this customer, and let's grab a query tag object equal to load. So I'm just looking at the specific engineering environment customer in here. So this shouldn't take longer than a few seconds. Actually, was it yesterday? I think I had the data here for yesterday when it was running. Yeah, so I have no problems going back to the previous day's data and remove this out of here. Okay, two days ago, past 2 days. How about this? I know what's going on. I put extra quotes in here. That's my fault, guys. Sorry about that. And this customer load. That's what happens when you copy and paste code from some other places. There you go. That's much better. All right. So we were able to extract some metadata information from a query tag object tag. And how about I'll visualize this real quick, and I'll take a look at the credits used by cloud services by the warehouse size. And here we go. We see the extra small is consuming something like a fraction of 100% of query services. And there's also clearly some sort of a query services, cloud used stuff used by metadata queries that don't even touch the warehouse. So our Log Explorer allows you to look at the log data and very easily pivot to the charting and the ad hoc exploration. That's not all, though. Let's switch back again to the fact that the Snowflake Trail, the event tables, can also contain distributed traces. So we have a Trace Explorer. That's another one of our trio of explorers: Log Explorer, Trace Explorer, and soon to be shown Metric Explorer. Here we have a variety of traces. I wound up ordering them by the duration, looking at the traces in here. And let me see, what do I say? I had a specific trace. How about this one? The service, let's do this right here: procedure, dummy logging, and tracing. Oops. So let me just kind of click around there. What did it? How about this? Procedure shows this value only. So I'm able to filter to just the traces emerging from this logging procedures that we have. We ourselves don't use the events table for distributed tracing too much. But we have customers that do. And so in this case, I'm able to open a distributed trace, and it's got some interesting information instrumented by the Snowflake itself. This is running Python code, and we're actually spitting out some of the events, so just some random counters along the way here. So if your application is using Snowpark Container Services or Snowpark in general, and you're instrumenting your code, which you should be, you will be able to see the distributed values arriving to the Trace Explorer and be able to just debug them in a nice visual way. So I've mentioned we have 3 different explorers. We already looked at Log Explorer, we looked at Trace Explorer, and we also have Metric Explorer. So some of the metrics, and take a look at the variety of the Snowflake metrics that we shape. Most of them are currently derived from query history, but there's some others that are derived, for instance, from the Snowflake table metering history right here. So I'm looking at the active bytes metric associated with tables, and I'm just looking at them in general for the last 3 days. You can see this is across my entire account. They have something like 68 terabytes worth on average. It was occasional drops in here. It's very interesting. So if I look at this particular thing, how about I choose a database, a database equal eng 101. This is one of our engineering 101 databases. So I am able to filter this view very rapidly. So now that particular database has 28 terabytes of stuff. How about we group it by the schema? And we'll run this and very rapidly see which schema. There's only a handful of schemas. It looks like the orange schema, the public schema, wound up dropping most of the data and then quickly reacquiring it right here. So you can do ad hoc exploration of your table storage, query durations, and anything else that we've shaped as a metric, and we're going to shape even more things using our metric explorer. Take this data, put it in the dashboard if you wanted to. I can go and click action and add to a dashboard and create a brand new dashboard and take it for these ad hoc exploration or something more useful later. So speaking of dashboards and interesting things you can do with them, we already mentioned that Kyle mentioned that we capture information about the Snowflake logins. That's one of the things that are payload of the login history, as you can see in the top left. We are looking at that view, but we also enrich this view with considerably more information than just available in login history. We bring some information from a session information and some users as well. So I whipped this dashboard out a few days ago for the login statistics. You can see logins by user, logins by client type, but more interestingly, right here, logins by authentication factors. The recent events with various Snowflake leaked credentials and then data exfiltration are really reminding everybody that it's really important to run Snowflake with a two-factor authentication. So this view right here in the bottom right is probably one of the more interesting ones. The row 3, which I've just highlighted, is the people who have password authentication, but no second authentication factor configured. We're going to ignore the RSA key pairs. Those are service accounts. We're going to ignore the SAML assertions and OAuths. Those are all protected by two-factor. But the stuff here, within my last few days, I do have 364 logins that were done using just password. If I wanted to find out who they are, I scroll a little lower, and I see the password and no MFA users over time. We got one of our engineers here, Justin. We got another one, the Austin is showing up right here, and there's a gentleman called Pitt. All of those could be, we can go and permutate and find out what's going on. We can see what types of drivers are used right here. So Justin is developing something inside of Streamlit and Python drivers. Our colleague Pitt, okay, where'd he go? I don't know why Pitt, oh, Pitt is using Snowflake UI. So you can, if you were to interrogate this kind of table, you can go and talk to those engineers and maybe enforce the MFA mandatory, or at least find out the reasons why they're doing it. We got a nice little geomap enrichment right here. Snowflake can't really do this natively, but we can. We have ability to get the information about the client IP and geocode it right here. So you can see people in Zurich are using our system, people in North America are using a system, etc. Very fun stuff. We strongly recommend that you turn on your multi-factor authentication on your logins, but if you're not, pay attention to who has it and what they're doing right here. So speaking of various interesting things, so let's say I would like to monitor a data exfiltration. So if I were to, just one second, let me bring that from the other screen, the dialog that I have configured a storage account on Azure. We don't really use, from engineering, we don't usually use anything from inside of the Azure, but I've created a storage account in which I've created a blob endpoint into which I intend to unload the data. Now, I've done it with a full control and awareness that I'm going to be doing it, but a lot of the recent Snowflake data leaks were really done through this. There's only one way of getting the data out of Snowflake, and it is big dump to an external storage. So inside of here, I've created, if I go maximize this, I've created, let's see, where my external stage right here. I've created a stage, and I've made sure that it's configured properly to dump as an external stage. And then I've unloaded, I'm able to select some data from a table right here and unload it to that specific stage. I'm just going to really quickly run that over. 1 and 2. That data is now unloaded. I've unloaded 45 rows from each one of those things. It's not a tremendous amount of data, but conceptually, I want to be aware when those things are happening. So as I switch back to observability for Snowflake and observe, we have a data export awareness dashboard right here that shows every unload operation, number of records were involved in here in the top left. You can see that's me unloading to one or second endpoint. You can see it visually. You can see when people are listing the files, and you can even see in the bottom right widget the times when integrations are created. You can't unload anything to an external stage unless it's been created. And creation of a brand new external stage is typically a rare operation, and you want to be aware of what's going on of when that happens. So as you are able, you can within the observe, you can absolutely trigger on that particular event arrival. And in this case, we are actually modifying stages quite a bit. We're only rarely creating additional storage integrations to which the stages are hooked up to. So earlier I loaded some data already, and I have a monitor that I've set up, which is called Snowflake Copy into External Stage Activity. I basically trigger on the presence of the queries that do a significant amount of unloading, although for me, significant amount of unloading is greater than one row. You could perhaps trigger on something larger, but you can see I've triggered in the last few days 1, 2, 3 times right here. And the result of this particular trigger, I've configured an email. So let me just kind of expose this out. This is out of my Gmail. I got a little notification that says, hey, somebody unloaded 90 rows. I've done it twice. 45 plus 45 equal 90. So it tells you what's going on, and it directs you right back to the dashboard that you can integrate. I think any customer that uses Snowflake and external stages and is concerned about authentication, security, and data exfiltration, especially in the light of recent events, should have something like this in their place. And you can absolutely use Observe to do this. So, all right, and let's take a look at the overall, actually, I skipped something. Okay, yeah. So there's a couple more things I want to show you. So the session activity. So the users log in into Snowflake and they do stuff. The information about that could be derived from a query history table. It could also be derived from a session information about the user. And by tying logins, sessions, and query history, we are able to provide a pretty interesting view on something I call the Snowflake Session Overview table that's derived from a session activity data set that we squished query history, sessions, and the user information login all into one. And in this case, I just focused on Justin. I really like to pick on him. He's one of our new intern engineers who is helping us build this observability for Snowflake app. Go, Justin. So you can see he's had a variety of activities and in one day. I guess I've had it since open. So you can see his times of when he logged in. I could see each one of his sessions as he's logged in. Basically, Snowflake UI and Justin uses Visual Studio Code integration. Each one of those tabs and each one of the dashboards creates a brand new session. So some of his sessions have errors along the way as he runs them end to end. Some don't. You can kind of take a look at them top to bottom. You can see when he's performing them. You can click on one of them and go navigate to a specific session exploration, which we'll show in just a little while. But you can see what queries he ran, the Justin has run in this view right here. And even more so, you could see, this is one of our new visualizations. You could see the amount of the data that he scanned and then in a session grouped by the number of queries in his session. So his longest sessions were already about 1,000 queries right here. So 719 queries, 26 queries. But we have a very neat visualization functionality anywhere from exploring the grids to drawing lines to putting bar charts, and in some cases even doing kind of a weight listed tree map style with hexagons. So Justin is well worth the exploration, but I think I'm running out of time a little bit here. So I'm gonna end with the final dashboard that we're just building out that gives us an idea of an overall Snowflake health. Just like Kyle and Grant mentioned earlier, we have a lot of awareness of what Snowflake health looks like. So this dashboard is, and this is still work in progress, but this dashboard right here is trying to reflect what we have inside of our own personal monitoring for our Snowflake, just general awareness of what's going on. So let's say I built this the last 3 days. So in this view right here, because it's been a while since I refreshed this. So I'm going to collapse the left side navigation just to get myself a little bit more free time. So in the last few days, we issued in this engineering environment 45 million queries. We've done 184 billion rows were inserted. Lots of data has been scanned. 86 terabytes out of this was spilled to local. So you can and remote storage. So you could see your query experience and kind of the spillage, what's going on. Well, in general stats, you could see the number of queries running, and we have this nice, neat new feature. We actually do detect and do pay attention to the version history of the Snowflake. Snowflake does not really publish that to you, but you can infer it from the query history, and that's what we do here. So at some point in the last 3 days, we actually, the Snowflake version has changed in here. So you can see there's a view here, went from 8.27 to 8.71. Probably a very minor point release, but we, because we use Snowflake in such a heavy fashion, we are highly sensitive to those releases. So there's a monitor that's tied up here to alert users about the Snowflake version change. So we will ship this as part of observability for Snowflake app. So you can detect an alert and what's going on. As you can see, the average query runtime and query errors, those particular things have not changed at all because of this deployment, which is fantastic and as it should be. But it's not always the case, as we unfortunately have found out in the past incidents. And so we are able to detect those particular changes, and so will you. So down here, we have some compile and queued and transaction block times. Those are the views of all the query timings that happen before the query itself runs. I mean, they are technically part of execution, but for instance, the queued overload time, so there's a 3 different warehouse health queuing times. So you can see we're observing the queued overload time. It's not really all that big, but we definitely have in general on the various warehouses. We have some warehouse under overload, being overloaded and queuing up queries, and that's a healthy situation to be. You want your warehouses to be as full of workload as possible, so they have a little bit of a queuing time. And 500 milliseconds is not that big of a deal. This particular dashboard is pretty handy for filtering. So if I were to go in here and choose a warehouse, how about this? I'll choose a warehouse called Odievich. Odievich. I'll bring the warehouse. I'll filter this out. All the widgets update itself, and I can see what my queuing time on this particular warehouse in the last 3 days look like. There you go. I had a little bit of queuing time here, just a little bit. My compilation time stayed solid. My P95 and average compilation times are doing good. And down here, you can actually slice and dice the warehouses a little bit differently by the provisioning and overload and repair time. I'm actually looking at Jay Wang, Justin, again, I'll pick on him a little bit more. I am able to interrogate the various metrics in conjunction with the query history on the same dashboard. So hopefully this gives you all a little bit of a taste of what this observability for Snowflake can give you. Again, I want to end on the picture of all the various data sets that we have here for you. It's all the information that is available on account usage and in events table, all married, enriched, ready for you to consume. Talk to us a little bit more about getting that set up in your account. And thank you, Grant. Back to you.
Awesome, Daniel. We've got a few questions coming in. I'll ask them in the order that they were received. So the first one comes from Mr. Jones. Can multiple Snowflake accounts be monitored by a single Observe account?
Yes, the answer is yes. You can the app for the Observe for Snowflake app, which I'll bring up on the screen right now, is tied to an account, but it can send multiple Observe apps, which is just a second, it will show. They can, from multiple Snowflake account, can directly send to single Observe instance. And in fact, all of our data sets are account aware. So
awesome. Excellent. The next question, what kind of alerts can I create on a query history and event table events? Anything to show?
Anything to show. Excellent. Let me drag this out of the way. So I've created a threshold monitor on the query history. I have a metric that's derived from a query history table. So I've created a threshold alert from the value of this specific metric. You can see my little metric jumping up and down, and I have a fairly aggressive threshold right here. I could relax it maybe a little bit. How about this? I'll relax it to 44. You jump around from here. But I can very easily go to my Log Explorer. Was I in Log Explorer? Oh yeah, here we go. Here's my Log Explorer. And we were looking at the data in a query history. So again, just to highlight this, we are in a query history. I'm visualizing a flow of credits used cloud services by warehouse size for all the specific customer of Observe, which is inferred from the query tag, and for specific accounting context, which is a data load. I can very easily pivot from here and go create a monitor from this thing. And I didn't have to create a metric from it. The metric is calculated kind of on the fly. And I don't know, this is just really kind of coming up with it, but maybe I want to be alerted, if in just a second. Yeah, maybe I want to be alerted when the credit spend of the cloud consumption is greater than 0.5. How about that? No, how about this 0.05, right? Is that, yeah, no. How about 0.1? What can I do? Oh, there you go. So it will be triggered here in the top left. So gives you an idea that anything, any log data could be turned into a monitor very easily. We have a native support for it using something called log monitor. Any metric data could be used into alert, turned into an alert as well, but the query history is there for you to turn into things. So I hope that answers your question.
That's awesome. Thank you, Daniel. Please enter any more questions. We got one more that just came in. You can put them in the Q&A or the chat. So from a data governance and accessibility perspective, can this solution extract information about field level access, associating users' roles with specific data queried?
Oh, I'm so glad you've asked about this. So if you go into the docs.snowflake.com and you go to account usage right here. So account usage. There's a couple of views. There's a view called access history, which we are able to get in. So for the access history view, for the people who use access history view, it's incredibly powerful. It's basically giving you an idea of which fields were read and which fields were written for a given table. We ourselves do not have this view in any of our accounts because we leverage Snowflake Standard Edition, and this is an enterprise-only feature. But for the customers of ours who have enterprise, we are able to ingest this view and provide you a field-based lineage. It's something I'm working on very actively right now. It is not ready to demonstrate today, unfortunately. But the answer is a resounding yes, we can do this for you. It is not a trivial thing to do, though, and some customers can attempt to try to parse the SQL from inside a query history to produce that information, but it works best when you combine information from a query history with information from access history. So if you have interest in this, talk to us and let's get this app deployed, and we'll show you what we can do for the table access, for the portions of the table, for the column access. All right.
Awesome. We have two more questions and then I think we'll end our session. So this one is, so if I have, say, Cloud Trail or Azure audit logs in my Snowflake tables, can I review those in the Log Explorer? Say these are ingested by us manually via our own ingestion pipeline.
Oh, it's interesting. If you have them already ingested into your Observe instance, you can absolutely marry them together with the data coming from Snowflake because they're all going to be part of Observe, and we can link between those things at the same time. You could also ingest, and I want to show you, this is our slightly newer UI. You can bring in information into arbitrary tables. So your table here, you can add this guy and you could bring, you could bring it. Oh, what did I just do? I didn't mean to do this. I think I refreshed it by accident. So you could bring this into observability view as well. And we can bring your append-only tables from inside of Snowflake into Observe directly using Observability Pump. But if that data is already in Observe, you can absolutely marry it together. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, last question here for Mr. Luong. Do I need to use tags to group my queries? Or is there a way Observe can group similar queries if I want to track performance, etc.?
I'm so glad you asked about this. This is one of my favorite topics to discuss. Snowflake query tag is incredibly powerful. So I'm going to switch over back to the raw view and take a look at the query tag. So in here, well, actually, how about this next one where it's parsed? You can see that it lets you put a JSON. Actually, you can put anything you want. It's usually a string, but you could cast it into a JSON object, and it is highly useful for categorization of the queries. However, some customers don't use that, and so query history view has a query hash and query parameterized hash values in here, which are part of native of Snowflake query history view. So you can use those as well and very nicely take advantage of them. Finally, we have this patterns feature. I'm kind of hesitant to click on, but let's see what's going on. So we have ability to create a pattern understanding. So we kind of group some of these queries together. So how many? We got 12 punctuation parts. Not bad, not bad. So this particular, we have 12 different categorized topics with this hash ID, and I could go and filter on them ourselves. So this is done. This what I'm gonna have on the screen is done by our logic. If you, in fact, you could take a look at the Opal logic that we produced, we used to produce this hash. It's kind of query regex based, if you will. But you have a full power of our Opal language to produce the query, the types of queries and group them together if the query tag is not in place. But query tags are awesome. Please use them if whatever you can.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel, for the excellent demo. We will send everybody a recording of this session. And this concludes our session. Thank you so much for your attention today.
Thank you, everybody.
Goodbye.